The Tokugawa Shogunate period, also known as the Edo era, was dominated by a powerful militaristic government led by multiple shogun generals, which spanned over 260 years. Features of the totalitarian rule had affected many aspects of Japan, specifically the severity of punishments inflicted upon citizens. The shoguns used punishments such as humiliation, torture, or even the death penalty to control the population effectively. The Edo era within Japan primarily focused on internal peace, political stability, and economic growth under the shogunate, founded by Tokugawa Ieyasu. It was the final traditional system that ruled over Japan before the Meiji Restoration. A key factor behind the origin of the Edo leaders was the victory over the Sakakatsu, which officially ended the Nanban period, also known as the Southern Barbarian Trade Era, due to the heavy interactions with foreign nations. Relations with other countries were discouraged and restricted after the shoguns gained authority over the islands of Japan, forcing the nation to become isolated from outside influences. Although this was not the first appearance of the shogunates, these leaders had been designated increasing authority over military forces by the emperor, who by that time only maintained control over cultural aspects of the nation. This left the shoguns to work closely with the daimyo, the nobles of Japan, and the warrior classes, which evolved into the shoguns slowly gaining control over Japan's trades and taxes. This authoritarian-like ascension through the roles appointed by the emperor generated the shogun's role over the effective punishments in the Tokugawa Shogunate period. Humiliation was one of the most effective ways to discourage citizens of Japan in participating in what was considered illegal activities at the time. Some of the degrading punishments were forced tattoos and debilitating ceremony of fumi. People who committed acts of theft or murder would be forced to endure tattooing. Arm tattoos were usually reserved for thieves, while face ones were given to murderers, which would effectively forever mock and punish the offender for the rest of their lives. The secondary source, Figure 7, made in 1893 by an unknown artist, depicts a scene from the Edo period, where a person is receiving an arm tattoo, commonly associated with thievery, surrounded by a small group of people who are watching on or inflicting the punishment, such as the person on the left-hand side, flogging him with a piece of rope. This source demonstrates the shogun's leader's process of deterring repeat offenders and staining criminals with ink to publicly shame and isolate them. This punishment will effectively maintain the shogunate's control over the citizens by humiliating any person who dared go against their authority. The Tokugawa Shogunate government will use the ifumi ceremony, which is required for every citizen to draw out Christian followers within their society, to limit the influence of westernization and reduce the fear of revolts against their ruling. This was a mortifying event for anybody, even if they weren't not Christian, as displayed in the primary source Figure A, made circa 1826 to 1829, depicting a man stepping on a fumi, usually a bronze or wooden image of a Christian figure, being observed by Japanese officials if they show any hesitation when stepping on the figure. Within the secondary source, Martin Ramos, professor of Japanese studies at a place I cannot pronounce, describes the punishment as quite well thought out, because at the time, Christians relied a lot on images. People prayed in front of an image, Mary, Jesus, so many thought that part of the God was inside the image. It was a link to the divine. For them to tread upon this was something very fearful. These sources help to exemplify the humiliation one went through to hide or prove they were not Christian, to avoid the deadly punishments that came afterward if they hesitated to step on the fumi. Hence, the successfulness of the ceremony of ifumi in the Edo era effectively weeded out hidden Christian followers within Japan to maintain shogunate's traditional values of Japan. Torture was one of the harsher penalties reserved for Japan's lower classes. While warriors or priests could be exempt from torture, these punishments were inflicted on commoners for either thievery, violence, or plotting against the shogun leaders, and they would experience harsh treatments such as flogging, amputation, and more. Although there were many harsher treatments the shogun used to maintain the traditional values of Japan, as depicted within source Figure 12, this primary source, found in the originally Portuguese book that I will not pronounce, written by Cardinal Antonio Francisco in 1650, depicts the torture method of anatoshuri being performed in a Christian martyrdom named Diego Yuki S.J. This method of punishment was used to force Christian followers to renounce their faith, by tightly binding them, hanging them upside down, and lifting them in a pit filled with excrement, till they either gave up or died. Thus, the anatoshuri torture method was an effective way to purge Christian faith from Edo Japan, so shogun leaders could maintain authority without the fear of westernization over the islands of Japan. Criminals within the Tokugawa Shogunate era were executed using multiple different methods, reserved for those who either encouraged and followed Western influences like Christianity, carried out arson, or committed murder, among other select crimes. Methods such as crucifixion, burning, and decapitation were publicly displayed to further discourage citizens from participating in anything against their order. In this sense, the death penalty was effectively used to control the population of Japan during the Shogunate period. Within this era, Christianity was highly discriminated against and deemed a Western influence that would weaken their hold on the government and people. The cruel treatment of those caught practicing Christianity was served to limit the looming westernization of Japan. These punishments are present within the 1622 artwork titled Martyrdom of Nagasaki, within the detailed primary source painted by the unknown eyewitness who possibly attended the Jesuit painting school in Japan. The artist depicts multiple punishments inflicted upon people who once worshipped Christian values. At the same time, a large crowd witnesses the event. The Christian offenders are portrayed wearing black or white robes. In contrast, the crowd around them is illustrated with many different colored gis, used by the Edo government to show the significant difference between the Christian follower and a non-Christian follower within their society. Harsh executions appear within this piece. For one instance, in the bottom left corner, people are shown to be decapitated by samurai warriors and heads being displayed on spikes, while in the middle of the artwork, numerous robed people are depicted being tied and burned to a stake in a pit. This primary source exemplifies the savagery that the Tokugawa Shogunate government were willing to go through to limit the Western influence's power within their society. Therefore, the success of executions within the Edo period was highly effective to fearmonger Japanese citizens into submission. The aforementioned punishments were extremely influential in discouraging Japanese citizens from committing what was deemed unlawful at the time, even discriminating against those who practiced Christianity. They did this by humiliating criminals with notorious permanent tattoos, forcing people to step on images of their religious figure, hanging people upside down to slowly coerce them out of their belief, and publicly executing Christian followers to slowly drive Western influence out of Japan, proved highly successful in allowing the shogun leaders to maintain their authority.